I want to build on the wonderful work of my three panel mates. From Jill's paper, I too will be talking about the question of Jewish facilitation of altered states of consciousness. I'll be building on some of the work that Ellie presented about the rich utility of Jewish magic as a realm to look at for resources in this space. And as you'll hear, I think there's a lot of resonances with Sam's talk, in as much as I too will be talking about the milieu of early modern Ashkenazi Hasidism and the promise and perils of retrieval. And so my talk focuses on the question of contemporary Jewish psychedelic facilitation. One of the most significant shifts from the first wave of Jewish psychedelic use in the 1960s and 70s to today's Jewish psychedelic revival is the transition from unfacilitated to facilitated experiences. In those earlier decades, Jewish psychedelic use was largely recreational, individuals exploring psychedelic realms without someone else holding space. Sure, folks often had collective journeys or had someone there to make sure the train didn't fall off the rails, but that person was more of a sitter than a shaman. Today, more Jewish individuals are engaging with psychedelics in facilitated contexts, either in clinical therapeutic or ceremonial sacramental settings. This shift reflects broader cultural trends in Western psychedelic use. Since the 1960s, there's been a gradual vibe shift away from the solitary, contemplative approaches to psychedelics inspired by Eastern mysticism toward the communal healing ceremonies of indigenous shamanic traditions. Similarly, Jewish psychedelic practice has evolved from personal mystical exploration to guided healing ceremonies. In these contemporary ceremonial settings, facilitators lead participants through specifically Jewish rituals and symbolic landscapes. This emergence of new Jewish ceremonial and sacramental contexts for psychedelic use is something new. If the therapist is the archetype of the clinical therapeutic framework, the shaman is the archetype of the ceremonial sacramental framework. But given that there is no bona fide lineage of Jewish shamanism or Jewish psychedelic ceremonial facilitation, the pressing question before us today is what skills should such a Jewish facilitator hone, and where might they look for historical precedent? If not of psychedelic facilitation itself, of a Jewish style of shamanic facilitation, where guiding individuals through healing rituals and altered states of consciousness have been intimately interwoven. Like shamanism at large, Jewish shamanism is a hot topic. In 2003, Gershon Winkler published Magic of the Ordinary, Recovering the Shamanic in Judaism, which locates the shamanic in Judaism through nature-based traditions that largely resemble indigenous Native American practices. More recently, we've seen the establishment of an online school of Hebrew shamanism that tries to offer practices and journey tools that are both mystical and earth-based. And more academic works like Yonatan Garb's Shamanic Trance and Modern Kabbalah that argues that the category of shamanism allows us to see aspects of modern Kabbalah that we may have otherwise ignored, things like trance, fiery transformations, and psychosomatic empowerments. 2 years ago, I offered an online course called Shamans of Ashkenaz, Reviving the Magic and Medicines of the Ba'alei Shem. I was surprised when over 120 people enrolled. Many participants were health professionals, death doulas, herbalists, midwives, and psychedelic guides, all seeking a shamanic Jewish model that felt authentic to Judaism, rather than adapting Jewish practice from other shamanic cultures. As ceremonial psychedelic use increases, Jews are asking themselves, who should facilitate these ceremonies? Rabbis, therapists, educators? Today I want to suggest that the Ba'alei Shem offer a framework for training future facilitators of Jewish ceremonial psychedelic experiences. The Ba'alei Shem are the closest Jewish equivalent to shamans because they were both medical healers and spirit workers. It's not so much that they were shamans, a term that has a lot of contention around it. They were Ba'alei Shem. But the closest parallel to their unique social role in other cultures is the shaman. So in public spaces, where the term Ba'alei Shem is meaningless, it is helpful to call them shamans of Ashkenaz. The title Ba'alei Shem dates back at least a millennium. In its very early usage across the Jewish diaspora, Ba'alei Shem, the plural of Baal Shem, were wonder workers, miracle men, who changed nature by using divine names. Baal means master, Shem, name, like Jews who, instead of pronouncing the divine name, they say Hashem. So Baal Shem is a Jewish magician in its origin who would use divine names to change nature, stop storms, stop fires. However, during the early modern period in Ashkenaz, Central and Eastern Europe, the role evolved significantly by integrating healing modalities. As Yochanan Petrovsky Stern describes in his article, you will find it in the pharmacy, Practical Kabbalah, etc. In Ashkenaz, the Baal Shem served as, quote, magician and hypnotist, but also as therapist, pediatrician, neurologist, homeopath, and family doctor. Jews and Gentiles from all walks of life turned to Ba'alei Shem to cure infertility, ensure safe childbirth, control epidemics, protect people or personal habitats from disasters like murder, fire, or robbery, and banish demons, treat depression, and exorcise evil spirits. These practitioners addressed physical ailments, spiritual afflictions, and social dangers. Petrovsky Stern notes that the Ba'alei Shem performed shamanic functions to restore social order and provide personal security. They mediated between empiric reality and divine realms, this world and the netherworld's spirits and living beings. In bridging the material realms, body, fire, plague, with spiritual realms, angelic, heavenly, mystical, they fulfilled what we can call a shamanic role. Let's quickly look today at how they were both herbalists and trance facilitators. Ashkenazi Ba'alei Shem often prescribed herbal medicines, particularly verbena. They commonly worked with local pharmacies, herb growers, and peddlers. Verbena was common throughout Ashkenazi regions, known in many names, as you can see on the slide. And already in ancient times, verbena had entheogenic applications. In Virgil's Eclogues, we find, bring water with woolly wreath these altars, kindle choicest frankincense and richest verbena, that through mystic rites some heavenly sent folly warps my lover's mind. The herb wasn't merely medicinal, but had mind-altering properties. In the early 18th century, Ba'alei Shem began publishing DIY healing manuals, specifically for Jews in far-fetched shtetls who couldn't have access to other doctors. In one manual called Toldot Adam, we find a fertility remedy. Make a bath and put into it the bath herbs called ox tongue, verbena, and other herbs. About 3 hours after the bath, fumigate her with these herbs, what we would today call smudging. This should be done for 3 months, 3 days each month. Or let the herb called verbena, be boiled in clear water, and let her drink the water and eat the herb. In these 3 modes of working with verbena, herbal baths, smudging, and tincture, there's nothing magical or Kabbalistic here, simply Ashkenazi herbalism. Yet in unpublished manuscripts recently discovered by Agata Paluch in her research on early modern Ba'alei Shem, we find magical recipes for harvesting verbena. One spell instructs, I order you, the herb called verbena, in the name of the Creator and the 72 of his names, the names of 4 angels, that none of your power and splendor remain in the soil, but that you come out of the world with the same power from which the Creator formed and built it. This is less of a prayer than a botanical spell. It is not addressed to God or to the angels, but to the herb itself. The spell aims to ensure that the herb is as potent as ecologically possible, and that its harvesting does not diminish the qualities bestowed on it by its creator and the earth. Here we witness the essence of Ba'alei Shem practice, the intimate dialogue between healer and plant that recognize herbs as both earthly and porous to more angelic and divine powers. Along with being herbalists, the Ba'alei Shem often facilitated trance experiences for healing purposes. While almost all Ashkenazi Ba'alei Shem were herbalists, not all were trance facilitators, but I want to highlight a few that were. This is most clearly documented in a story about the Baal Shem Tov, who Sam mentioned, the influential 18th century Baal Shem who inspired the birth of Hasidism. In this account, Rabbi Mendel of Bar notices that the Maggid of Mezerich, who would later become the Baal Shem Tov's main student, is ill. He advises the Maggid to seek out a besht. The besht is an acronym for Baal Shem Tov. When the Maggid visits the besht first attempts to heal him through words, prayer, and conversation, similar to a therapist. When this proves ineffective, the Besh says, I wanted to cure you with words alone, since that is an enduring remedy, but now I have to cure you with medication. The Besh then prepares a tincture from a ground precious stone, but this too fails to heal the Maggid. Finally, he summons the Maggid in the middle of the night for a third healing modality, a trance experience. The Maggid recalls, I found the Besh sitting with a small candle on his head. It is the middle of the night. He was dressed in a coat of wolf fur turned inside out. He asked me whether I'd studied Kabbalah, and I answered, yes, of course. A book was lying before him on the table, and he instructed me to read aloud from it. The book was 3 Enoch, a very unusual text, not one very common amongst rabbinic Jews, containing passages that began, Rabbi Ishmael said, Metatron, the Prince of Presence, who is the great archangel, told me, etc. After the Maggid read a bit, the Besh said, it is not correct. I will read it for you. In other words, you're reading the words, but you're not embodying the experience. As the Besh read, he began to tremble. We are dealing with the design of the chariot, the Merkavah, and I am sitting down, and he jumps up. The text they were studying concerned ascending to the realms of the Merkavah, guided by the archangel Metatron. The Besh then laid the Maggid in the shape of a circle on the bed, a somatic posture reminiscent of the traditional child's pose that several hundred years earlier, Haigon had recommended for accessing the Merkavah through inner visions. I'm going to skip ahead. And that provides healing for the Maggid. Another notable Ba'alei Shem, Samuel Falk, also facilitated trance experiences for others. Witnesses described him in his London home wearing amazing epic headgear with divine names dangling from it for ceremonies, and in another account, his student records that he invited in 1749 several of his followers late at night to his room where they chant psalms, lie on the ground, and light candles. In these accounts, we observe several commonalities between the Besh and the Ba'alei Shem of London. They both guide trance experiences for others. These sessions typically occur late at night. They involve costumes and candles. They contain somatic postures. They reference Merkavah visionary mysticism. The Ba'alei Shem of London has tapestries with Merkavah imagery on them. They incorporate chanting, and most importantly, both were trance facilitators who also served as health professionals. This tradition did not live long. For many reasons that, for lack of time, I'm going to skip through very quickly. There was a lot of frauds, as you can imagine. The Enlightenment comes around. Jews are now admitted into Western Germanic medical schools, saturating the medical marketplace. And by the mid-19th century, there are not many more Ba'alei Shem. And I want to suggest that this lineage can provide a lot of resources for contemporary Jewish psychedelic facilitation. Future training for ceremonial psychedelic facilitation will benefit from integrating medical knowledge, like the Ba'alei Shem had, with the practical Kabbalah practices of the Ba'alei Shem. These marginalized ancestors offer a helpful, though dormant, lineage for emerging Jewish ceremonial psychedelic facilitators, many of whom are in this very room today. It seems to me to be the case that Jews cannot claim a specific sacramental relationship with any single entheogen, like the Native American church and peyote. But the Ba'alei Shem tradition offers something equally important for contemporary legal recognition of Jewish psychedelic ceremonies, a uniquely Jewish lineage of Jewish practitioners who methodically integrated botanical knowledge, altered states of consciousness, and theo-mythical frameworks. Today's Jewish ceremonial psychedelic facilitators who draw from the Ba'alei Shem don't have to create brand new religious practices. They can draw from a sophisticated tradition of Jewish shamanism that was sidelined by modernizing forces. The toolkit of the Ba'alei Shem can be an aid for most emerging models of Jewish ceremonial facilitation. It offers Jewish healing practices, wisdom for working with elements and angels, protocols for ensuring safety during trance experiences, rituals and spells that invoke protection in moments of danger, songs for ascent and descent, tincture prep, and hundreds of other concrete ways to help prepare, guide, and reground the hundreds, if not thousands, of Jews who are seeking psychedelic guidance today. Thank you.